Dear friends, students and learners, welcome to the present module of the Material Science course. I am Shashank Shrivastava from School of Engineering and Technology, Indira Gandhi National Open University. So, before this session, we have just started the unit number 5, which was regarding the plastics and the reinforced plastics. So, we began with that and we discussed what are plastics and what all comprise of plastics and how we are going to produce. So, certain things we discussed, the objectives we discussed, what we will be covering in this plastics unit, and now we are moving to the new session, the new module, and we start with the polymerization types. Before this we discussed about the polymers and the monomers. Now what are the types of the polymerization? So, when several of bifunctional molecules, like we studied in the previous session, there are bifunctional, trifunctional molecules. So, if bifunctional molecules, meaning their two ends are active, they join in a chain structure, then this is called the addition polymerization. So, this is called the addition polymerization. So, this the process of polymerization, this polymerization actually does not take place on its own, but it has to be initiated, propagated and then terminated. So, it is a whole process, it cannot happen on its own. So, we will discuss what all is there in this process. So, first of all, initiation. So, split hydrogen peroxide, that is H2O2, is used to initiate the reaction of polymerization. So, formula is H2O2, or you can say 2 hydrogen and 2 oxygen atoms, and this hydrogen peroxide is heated to split into 2 free radicals, which initiate the polymerization. So, this is the process of initiation of polymerization. Then propagation, how it will spread. So, the energy of the chain polymer is lower than that of the independent monomers that form the chain, and hence the chain grows in length fast after initiation. So, this energy actually of the polymer is lower than that of the monomer. So, it will go on combining and form a long chain. And now how we terminate this process? Actually, we can terminate it by adding a certain impurity, a small trace of that impurity, or by joining the two ends of the chain. So, suppose the chain has been formed and there are two ends and you join them, so they will be blocked, they cannot join to another molecule. And then the final thing in termination, third point, is that if the supply of monomers is exhausted. Suppose there is the ethylene monomer and we are not getting its supply, then also it is obvious that the chain will stop. So, ethylene, that is C2H4, polymerizes into polyethylene, and vinyl chloride, that is C2H3Cl, polymerizes into polyvinyl chloride. So, these are some examples of the addition polymers. So, one process we have discussed, that of the addition polymers. So, monomers of two different types can join in a single chain in copolymerization. So, like we discussed about the addition polymerization, where there was monomer of a single type only. Here the monomers may be of different types, then this process will be called the copolymerization. Like in this figure you can see there is the vinyl chloride and there is the vinyl acetate. So, these two things are different and they combine together. So, this vinyl chloride and vinyl acetate, that is C2H3Cl and COOCH3, they combine and give us a new polymer. So, this process is known as copolymerization. And a copolymer is very much like a solid solution in crystalline material, such that its properties are very much different than those of the constituents. That is why it is a solid solution. Then there is one more type of polymerization. We have discussed the addition polymerization and copolymerization. Third one is the condensation polymerization. What happens in this? There is a process when a second non-polymerization molecule is produced as a byproduct. So, if a byproduct is there which is a non-polymerization type of molecule, then it is called the condensation polymerization. Like for example, the water is a byproduct, or hydrogen chloride HCl is a byproduct, or methanol CH3OH is a byproduct. So, if these are coming, then it is a condensation polymerization. Similarly, there is one more type where hexamethylene diamine and adipic acid combine together to form nylon molecules, and here also the byproduct is water. So this is also an example of condensation polymerization. Now we will discuss the microstructure of the polymers. So the polymers have three distinct arrangements of molecular chain. So there are three types of structures. The first one is the amorphous structure. As you can see in the figure, molecular chain are randomly arranged and they are bent several times. You can see in the figure they are bent and in different ways also. So it is not like in layers or something like that. They have different kinds of configurations, and these chains, as you can see in the figure, they cannot move easily past each other because of their entangled nature. You can see like in the figure, if you view any of the chain, then some are entangled in some other way, some other fibers are entangled in different way, but they are very compact. That's why, because they cannot move very easily against each other, and they are called amorphous type. Thermosetting plastics, like we studied earlier, thermosetting and thermoplastic are two varieties of plastic. So these thermosetting actually have this kind of structure. That's why their strength is more, because they get entangled between each other and they become compact, and it's very difficult to move them against each other. The chains cannot move easily. So the displacement is also less, and to displace it, higher stress is required. And we require higher temperature also for the straightening of the chains. Some thermoplastics also, which are considered weaker, also have amorphous structure. So thermosetting, obvious, it has amorphous structure, but some thermoplastics are also there which have amorphous structure. Then after the amorphous structure, we have the crystalline type. Crystalline, see how straight type of fibers are there. The material, they are almost parallel to each other. You can see the structure in the polymers, they are consisting of chains which are aligned in one direction. You can see in the figure, it's quite clear. So the symmetry of the chains or the macromolecules is lost because of attachment of bulky molecule to randomly available bonds in the chain. If this particular molecule combines with a bulky molecule, then this symmetry may be lost, and the example is polyvinyl acetate. In certain cases, what happens that a part of the structure contains aligned type of chains, whereas the other part has meaning mixed type, where they are in compact structure. So then this is called a mixed type of microstructure, because it has some fibers which are somewhat crystalline type and some others are amorphous type. So then there is a mixture, and they will have the properties also like that, mixed properties. Apart from the basic chemical nature, the properties of a polymer are very much affected by its structure. The chain molecules exhibit strength along their length only if chain molecules produce oils or soft solids like the paraffin. The molecular weight of the polymer is controlled by the weight fraction of the constituents and the chain length. So these are the two factors which control the molecular weight of the polymer. One is the fraction of the constituents and the other is the chain length. So those polymers which have higher molecular weight will be tough and will be more heat resistant. So they will be better if they have more molecular weight. Low density polymers will be soft and gummy. They will be like gum, they can stick. Then the long chain molecules can be cross-linked by introducing polar groups like the carboxyl group, the hydroxyl group, chlorine, fluorine or nitride. So the long chain ones can be cross-linked, and that makes them more strong also. Such cross-linking will increase secondary intermolecular forces. Like I told you, they will become strong because the intermolecular macromolecular forces will increase, and thus overall strength and rigidity will also increase. Now we talk about the flexibility of these polymers. So there are dense crystalline structure which provide high melting point, and that is also very sharply defined in this case of polymers, and they have very high tensile strength and density. But all these things, actually dense crystalline structure with all these good properties, it makes it somewhat brittle also. So now we have to look about this property of flexibility to remove this brittleness. So flexibility and impact strength, how can it be improved? By introducing amorphous characteristics in the structure. Because amorphous, we saw, it's stronger, it's more compact, and it's difficult to be displaced. The chains displacement has to be made with quite a lot of effort. So if we make it amorphous type, then its ductility will also increase. So what are the ways for introducing this flexibility? One way is the copolymerization and reducing the symmetry and increasing the flexibility, because symmetry was more in case of the crystalline one, not in the amorphous one. Then it is also increased by addition of some substances like the plasticizer. You may have heard about it. There are plasticizers which increase the flexibility of polymers. And these general plasticizers are like the non-drying vegetable oils and monomeric chemical of high boiling point temperature, or polymeric resinous material of low molecular weight. So these plasticizers, what they do, they occupy positions between the molecular chains. So there are chains and they will occupy the position between them. What will happen due to this? The force of attraction between them reduces. The force of attraction between the molecular chains of the polymers will reduce. So then it becomes obvious, then more flexibility will come in and brittleness will reduce. This will permit them to move relative to each other. Then the molecular chains, due to lesser intermolecular forces, will be able to move against each other, and thus flexibility will improve. But there is a fall in the tensile strength. After discussing about the types of the polymers and the flexibility and how we can introduce it in polymers, we now move on to other type of plastics, that is rubber. So what is rubber? Rubber is a plastic which is largely derived from natural sources that we all know, most of us would have heard about it, and it is generally used in a modified form. So rubber belongs to a broad class of materials known as elastomer. So what is elastomer? Actually, elastomer is something which has both the viscous property as well as the property of elasticity. So it is viscoelastic, and at the same time the intermolecular forces in these elastomers between the molecules is very less, so they have greater flexibility also. So these are elastomers, and that's why they have a property of large extension. An elastomer can extend 100 to 1000% under the applied force. So natural rubber, also known as the polyisoprene, this is the chemical structure of rubber, is obtained from trees. So there are certain trees from rubber is obtained, and they are obtained as a colloidal dispersion in the milky liquid, that is known as the rubber latex. And this material actually is very soft in its semi-solid state and is converted into sheets by coagulation with acids and passing between the rolls. So you put some acid in this rubber and then you place it between the rollers, so sheets will be formed. This rubber sheet will be known as the crop rubber or the smoke sheet grains, and the strength comes due to the vulcanization process which takes place at a high temperature. Then vulcanization, what it is, actually we introduce sulfur in between the rubber, so it becomes hard and more strong. But nowadays other processes are also there, but the basic thing is that sulfur is introduced. And what happens due to this? Cross links are created between the molecular chains. Higher the degree of cross linking, harder will be the rubber. So highly vulcanized natural rubber is very hard, by the name ebonite. Natural rubber is chlorinated by passing HCl through the benzene solution of natural rubber, and the product so obtained is converted into thin adhesive tapes. Hot melt coating for paper is produced from isomerized rubber dissolved in aliphatic or aromatic compounds. So what we see like coating for paper, so it is produced from this rubber only. And then there is a process called the isomerization, in which rubber molecules are rearranged in cyclic form. So here you see the natural rubber monomer. which is isoprene as told earlier. So you can see here there is a double bond between the carbon atoms, then there is the H atom and the CH3 atom. So this is isoprene, and actually this double bond breaks and opens up and can combine with other similar type of monomers and can form a polymer. It seems that the macromolecular chain extends in the direction of carbon-carbon double bond. As I told you, this opens up. The methyl group CH3 and the hydrogen, if you see in the figure, both are on the same side. So what happens then? They will try to interfere with each other, and due to this interference, there will be a certain bend towards the opposite side. The molecule will bend towards the opposite side. So this rubber-like material or the elastomer is thus composed of several chains of molecules which are curled, as shown in the figure A. You can see there. So this type is the unstretched type. They are curled with each other. And any application of force on this curled type of structure, what will do? It will cause the bent or the curled molecules to straighten up. So this configuration is shown in the figure B. You can see the things have straightened up. But when we release this deforming force, then the chains will bend again, thus causing the rubber to regain its original length. That's why it has got very good elasticity, because elasticity is the property of regaining original length after the force is removed. Rubber is a very elastic substance. But by the process of vulcanization, which we have learnt earlier and which has been mentioned before, what happens that cross links are created. Then this straightening up which has happened, it will not go back to its bended form. Whatever force we applied and it is straightened up, so it will remain like that because of the cross links that have been created, and this will provide it strength. And if it is in the bended type of structure, then what will happen due to the vulcanization? Cross links will be there, and then it will not permit it to straighten up. It will remain like that if force is applied. So this also gives a strength in the bended form itself, cross link. So after discussing about the rubber, we will see what all plastics can be used for engineering purposes. So they are named as engineering plastics. So what are the advantages of these engineering plastics actually? They are used as engineering materials for machine parts, bodies and casting, and for structures, mainly because of low density. And although their strength is much less than that of the metal. And then in the field of electrical engineering also, they are very much used. Why? Because they can act as insulators. They are not good conductors of electricity. And then they can be recycled also. Thermoplastics are the one which are generally recycled. So what are the drawbacks of these engineering plastics? They have very low melting point, and so they cannot be used for high temperature purposes. Then the impact strength of the plastics is another important characteristics, and generally these have low impact strength because if any vibration is there or it is likely to occur, plastics of low impact strength cannot bear that. Their non-degradability is also a very big problem, like we see so much of wastage in the form of plastic bottles and all those things are coming up, and everybody is searching for a solution how to dispose this kind of waste. So this is a big problem in case of the plastics, and they are banning also in some places the use of plastic. So now we discuss about the natural polymers. Earlier we have discussed about the synthetic ones. So there are certain trees which execute thick liquid which when solidified will turn into a brittle material, and that is called rosin. So rosin is somewhat a solid material and it's different from the resin. So don't confuse with that, it is rosin. Shellac or lac is exudate product of animal life. So shellac or lac which we use, it comes from the animal life or parasitic insect like Coccus laca, which feeds upon certain Indian trees. So this material has very low tensile strength, and on dissolving in spirit it can be used for polishing wooden surfaces. So this shellac or lac is basically used for polishing wooden surfaces. It's a natural polymer. And finally, one of the most natural polymers we all know we use it is the wood, and it's a naturally occurring polymer whose main constituent is cellulose. You can see in the diagram also the structure of cellulose molecule is given. So the chain molecules of cellulose are highly aligned. They have this property of good alignment, and this alignment makes wood very directional in mechanical properties. So the wood then becomes a directional type of polymer where the mechanical properties will be good in one direction and they may not be good in the other direction. So it says that it is not isotropic in one sense. Wood is a living matter composed of cells which resemble long thin tubes. So there may be very thin tubes, and if you combine them together, then we can say it is somewhat like wood. The walls of these tubes are made with cellulose fibers which are aligned along the axis. So cellulose fibers are the constituents of these tubes, and they align along the axis of the material. A complex amorphous material called the lignin binds cell walls together. So there is an amorphous material called lignin, so it acts as a binder. In the case of wood, it will bind those cellulose fibers, and lignin makes 20 to 35% of the wood, and you can say that it's about 20 to 35% of the wood, meaning the binder is 20 to 35% along with 50 to 60% of cellulose. So when both these things are there, cellulose plus lignin in a certain percentage, then it is a whole wood. Small percentages of resins, gums, minerals and carbohydrates are also present. So other things are also there, but in very small percentage. While the density of wood material is constant for all types of wood, the presence of voids and cracks of different sizes and numbers will cause variation of density from one type to another. So there will be a certain number of voids and cracks, and generally we will take the density of it to be a constant, but in reality it is not so, and it can vary for different kinds of wood from one type, like suppose there is the sesame wood or then there is the mango tree wood. So the density will vary accordingly to the number of voids and cracks that are there in the particular material of wood. The hygroscopic nature of cell walls causes absorption of water and swelling of wood. So wood is a hygroscopic material, that means it attracts water, absorbs water. You may have seen also, if there are certain materials of wood in your house and you keep pouring water on it, then it will decay, it swells also. So these water molecules behave very much like plasticizer, providing flexibility to the wood. So the water acts like a plasticizer, it makes it more flexible, wood becomes more flexible. And as soon as we remove the water, then the wood will become rigid. With seasonal changes also we see these things. In winter the wood will behave somewhat different, in summer it will behave somewhat different because of this water factor only, because moisture comes in or it goes out. Organic acids actually do not attack wood at room temperature, but inorganic acids and the alkaline solutions do attack wood, especially at higher concentration and temperature. So if you have like the HCl, this is inorganic, so it can attack it, especially at higher temperature. On prolonged heating at 105 to 150 degrees centigrade, the organic matter begins to decompose and wood turns black. So around 105 to up till 150 degree, the wood will start burning and it will give us carbon only because it turns black. Wood burns readily, giving heat and hence used as a fuel. We all know it is used as a fuel in all our villages and even now in the cities also. So this wood is a very good fuel, but it can be chemically and mechanically treated also to produce wood pulp, which is used for producing paper. So from trees we produce paper. There is a saying also, if we want to save trees, we have to save paper. So this is also one way of using wood. So what are the advantages and disadvantages of wood? So the advantages are listed here. It is used as a structural material, and why it is used as such? Because it is readily available and it has low density and it is convenient to handle. Especially in areas where there are a number of earthquakes happening, you may see that they have wooden houses as well because it has low density. so it will not cause that much of damage as compared to concrete and all. In Japan, you may have seen, or somewhere where the number of earthquakes are more. So coming to the disadvantages of wood, it has got hygroscopicity and anisotropy. Like discussed earlier, it absorbs water, so it then weakens up if it absorbs water, so it's a disadvantage. Then anisotropy, I discussed earlier also that in one direction it may have very good properties, in the other direction it may not have. And how to make this wood stronger and better, there are certain number of points I am discussing now. So there are odd numbers of 0.5 millimeter to 1.25 millimeter thick sheets. If they are joined together on surface by phenolic resins with grain directions perpendicular to each other, then it results in better plywood. So there is a certain thickness of this wood or the plywood sheet, and they have to combine in such a way that the grain molecules have to be perpendicular to each other. Then only this better plywood can be made. In this way we can strengthen this kind of wood. Then by compressing wood under high pressure and temperature, compressed wood of higher density can be produced, and this is used for special purposes. Then the wood in the form of veneers is impregnated with phenolic resin to eliminate water absorption. So this is one process of removing water absorption or hygroscopicity. We will impregnate it with phenolic resin. The thin veneers are bonded together because of this phenolic resin and cured at 150 degree to 160 degree centigrade, and they produce a wood called the impreg wood. Then another variety, compression of impreg wood. This particular wood where we use the phenolic resin, if we compress it under high pressure and then we cure it at sufficiently high temperature, then it results in a very dense and strong composite laminated wood, and this is called the compreg wood. So now we have got the strong wood, which is a composite laminated wood. And wood laminates are not only strong and dense, but they also do not absorb water. So this is a very good property because they won't be damaged. Then they cannot be attacked by fungi. Sometimes termite also attacks wood, so it will prevent this because it comes due to moisture only. And these resist acidic and chemical attack and will show good dimensional stability. So in this session we discussed about the polymerization, the process of polymerization, how it takes place and the types of polymerization. Then we further moved on to different kinds of plastics like the rubber and the wood, their applications in our society and their various properties also. Further we will discuss in the next session. Thank you very much.